Thank you for accepting my interview for Tales and Tunes Talks for my blog, where I host creative people who have stories to tell. So let's start with a practical question. When I was going through resources on the internet about the way you describe yourselves, were like three things were the main bits. And one was independent practicing artists, husband and wife, co-founders of Raw Ground Arts. And when you look at them, all of them very bold pursuits. Being independent, doing art independently, leading a marriage, and then running an art business. So how do you manage to do them all together?
We thought about this together. We keep showing up. So we keep making art relevant to our everyday. It is very much our everyday practice. So whatever we do, there is usually a creative element involved, whether it's cooking, going to meetings, talking with the kids, what we think and how that relates to the world around us.
So you're keeping the creative spark right in the middle of everything.
It connects to everything we do. I think it's taken a while maybe to work that out, but actually art isn't just going to the studio and putting on an apron and a smock and going, oh, I'm an artist. It's literally whatever we're doing is what is our art, really, you know.
We overlap a little bit, and embracing that's good. So to bring in the other collaboration, but also maintain our own independent themes within our works. Because as a business
Such a balance.
as well, it's tricky. And also as a business, we really wanted to make sure that back in 2016, we made a concerted effort to come together. And I'd been a practicing education art facilitator for quite a number of years. From the moment that Tahira found me this great job that came up at Kew Gardens back in 2006. And from then, I was able to then help them develop their art department and then go into work for lots of different kind of organisations. But it was very much, we were, bringing up children together, trying to maintain a practice. Tahira went on to study and kind of further her skill sets.
I had a small business, Natural Calm.
Yes, I read about it,
So I learned a lot creating that. I learned a lot about myself and what I was making. I realised like the business side was interesting, but I didn't want to keep making the same thing. I learned a lot about who I was as an artist.
When reading about you, you have so many titles and it's so rich, and I really admire, which is leading on to my second question, because coming from the background of having very serious one title, for some years, and then moving on to another one, you have loads of titles. Actually, this sounds more natural because as human beings, we are so rich inside ourselves, we have so many things, and then you manage to turn what you have inside into practical things that you make, in everyday life, like, artist, educator, consultant, facilitator, company owner. And it's possible.
You know what? I don't think we've really looked at it like that. I think it's just, I think it must come from our parenting. Is that we didn't have parents that sort of, whether this is good or bad, didn't force anything on us. So you're kind of left to go, okay, I want to see who I am. And for me, I was always good at drawing. I liked art. I started to think about concepts and ideas. So I just naturally followed an art path. In the 80s, there wasn't a lot for artists in some way. There wasn't anything about, like there is now, about how to further your career. So I just stumbled along really and kept art in that feature. So I always was attracted to jobs that had a creative side, whether it was working in a paint and paper shop and then I always had my art by my side, which is when I created the little business, the Natural Calm. So it was always that was there. So even having kids, it was still always there.
It's like bringing part of you, even from childhood, together with you where you go.
And that's just what I did, and I think you probably did the same.
Yeah, I think it's about recognising that you've got lots of different characters and personalities and elements to yourself, and there's a lot of drive, I think, in society to succeed in one thing and also to toe the line a bit.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really encourage you to believe you can do everything. And actually, you can, as long as everything comes from you and that you're the kernel of all the things that you do, as in like the core. As long as it relates back to what you really want to do, you believe in, that you've got different kind of hats that you can wear, but you can also be that one creative mind through all of those practices, and that includes looking at writing as an element, as an art form, and bringing that into a practice. And it's something that we both have done a little bit of, but in different ways within our practices.
But what are the challenges, and how do you, what keeps you going forward and overcome those challenges?
Knowing which one to focus on at a given time can prove challenging, but saying that when we're working on one, we're in fact having a positive impact on something else. So they're all interconnected. But that is, the challenge is, for me, I have so many ideas. So I tend to, which is what I'm learning now, is to slow down a little bit and stay focused, to keep moving on and not focus on one thing. That's more to do with my art practice.
And how about you, Stuart?
Yeah, so I think I'm definitely someone that can get slightly overwhelmed with all the possibilities, all the options that I've got, and I see it a bit like having this kind of strange halo or hemisphere around me, where I can almost reach out and grab something, and that sometimes becomes too much in terms of the choices. And I then find, okay, if I just choose one of those, it will feed in and enrich everything. So
the other ones,
so there's often a bit of pressure. Say if you've got something you want to submit some artwork or create an artwork that's going to then be able to be submitted for a competition or submission, or working towards our own shows. But then at the same time, you've got a funding application that needs to be completed, and you're thinking,
it's huge.
It's too much. But then coming back to the point, again, you always come back to your kind of core, and you think, okay, as long as I'm doing one of those, that will feed into the other. Because I think they keep the momentum going, and it doesn't have to be a direct, if I work on that, then that's creative, I'm forgetting something else. It has a knock-on effect.
It sounds like a different type of focus. It's still very focused, actually.
It
is more focused than the usual concept of focus.
Stop.
No.
Yeah.
But it reminds me, it's quite kinetic. It reminds me of those swinging pendulum balls that connect. You 4 or 5 of them in a row, and one knocks and it transfers the energy to the other one at the other end. And I think that's actually a good metaphor, visual metaphor for actually how things work.
You navigate
and
the different titles.
But also we have a lot of respect for each other. We do have our boundaries, and I think we just really genuinely enjoy each other's company. That sounds obvious, doesn't it? But I think we respect each other's practices, art practices. And also we have quite a holistic life as well. And I think that definitely helps us. I was a yoga teacher.
So everything you do around feeds back into the core, as long as you...
I don't think we would be able to do it if we didn't have a holistic way of living and looking at.
It's actually interesting, because the world is all about categorizations and thinking that it's actually more practical and make you more successful, but it's not actually. So it is a bold move in that sense as well, I find. So going back to, you started talking about a bit, Tahira, about why you became an artist in the first place. I want to start with Stuart. In a map book, which is an interesting project on its own.
Yeah. So it's interesting you found that. I'm just good digging for that one to come up. Yeah.
I'm just curious. Very interesting project. And in its blurb, you say its name is On the Walk, a sense of place. And on its blurb, you say, an awareness of responding to something other than my eyes remind me of the reasons I became a mark maker. And it seems like very contradictory to being a visual artist, like everything to do with what the eye can see you are doing. But does this sense of perception beyond what the eye can see define why you are a mark maker, in your words?
Yeah, so I think with my work, I feel like I'm I want to have an impact on the world around me. And I almost want it to resonate, like to kind of come out of me, like just all directions. I definitely have this kind of feeling of things being exponential and not like an explosion, but more like they are just
Wave.
filtering out. Yeah, like ripples, like it goes in all directions. And I think one of the things that helped to feed into that particular project was, I can't remember if it came just before or around that time, but I did some work with the Sunbury Embroidery Gallery and the Walled Gardens in Sunbury, and worked with the Blind Art Association, who just donated their collection. And I was working alongside and creating an exhibition with blind artists, and did some site responsive work where I tried to tap into that sense of what other senses can I experience, what do we really experience. And I think because it comes from within and I want to project out, and many artists do, that's why they display their work, they want their work to be exhibited. I think it resonates with what is the core emotion, what is it that I want to be communicated.
Sometimes seeing things is blocking.
Yeah, it's only one of our senses.
Yeah, I used to, I'm an amateur choir singer as well. So in one of the projects that my previous choir did back in Istanbul was they did a choral work in the darkness, like completely like audience and the choir is in complete darkness, no light. It was in an underground, and the impact was immense. The feeling of hearing the choral sound in complete darkness was immense. Sometimes seeing things is blocking things. Maybe you're right.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's that sense of vibration and reverberation and all those kind of elements that kind of trigger us. And I think because of the sight and going on a walk in that way enabled me just to also see things that I wouldn't even stop and look at, things we drive by, smells, sounds, definitely all those elements are really, and then also just touch. It's very, I know I'm just listing all the senses now, but it's that kind of sense of absorbing them and then finding out how they make you think and feel. And I think that's what artwork should do, whether it's visual or whether it's soundscapes or whether it's other
But I would
music,
say your art is very physical. You like the physicality.
So and I think my scale of my work is large, and I want to physically ingrain myself within that, and then for that to kind of almost echo and bounce back out when the viewer sees it. So I definitely have a sense of wanting to be the viewer to experience something, and I think if I experience it, then I can communicate that, and there's a chance that will happen for the viewer. And that's when it is on a visual level, but I want it to absorb my senses, my interpretation, and then communicate what I'm believing in and feeling at that moment. So it's definitely of the moment, it's of that time, and it's not something that then my work will always be about that, but whatever it is, it's kind of, it does feel like it really comes from a place
inside. Yeah, wonderful. And Tahira, you have a map book project as well. I mean, you have it's amazing. It seems like it's not like you are doing the same things, but you have a rhythm, a parallel rhythm, sometimes drifting apart, sometimes coming back, so with joint projects and then drifting apart. I quite like that rhythm, to be honest. But anyway, so in the map project of yours, Hidden Islands book, you describe islands, which was different than what I would see islands, because islands are quite open out there to me, but you describe them as secret hideaway places, escape routes to somewhere new and undiscovered. And similarly, Raw Ground Arts, the name, evokes a sense of something foundational and untamed and raw. So is it how you see art? A place of discovery of new territories?
Yeah, I thought this was a really interesting question and an interesting way of seeing it. I think I've always been someone who wants to find out. So in my art, I'm always asking a question, or I'm always tempted by a place, a sense of place, or we call it in art site responsive or site specific.
Yes, actually the drawn together, how you describe the exhibition is portrait-based inquiry.
Yeah.
I quite like that title,
so there's always an inquiry in a way. And I love that, because I love the idea that I don't know what I'm going to feel. So then I that's the challenge. It's like, oh, what am I really feeling when I go to somewhere? If I have to do a project in an old building, what is it I'm sensing? What is it I'm picking up? Is it the building? Is it the people that are not there? So a lot of my work is about what you can see and not see, what is unseen. So we're presented with an empty room. You can't see anything, but there is a lot of energies, a lot of things that are happening that are in the floors, in the walls, in the seats. You know, someone sat on a seat for so long. What is that bringing up? And also, I think it's a way of finding out who I am.
Yeah, this is what we are constantly a lifetime practice.
And then you, in an art practice, you then respond to someone else, and I really like that. There's definitely a need to have to make art to make a sense of who we are.
That nicely connects to the other question. Actually, I but checked out the names of your exhibitions, drawn together, his and hers, and then the map books and titles of your many paintings regarding, again, this partnership or the landscapes. Maybe it wasn't deliberate, but this was my observation. So many of your works revolve around the human relationship with the landscapes and your unique life and business partnership, which is obviously very precious to you. So as a writer now, I'm trying to explore what stories I have in me. And I keep writing short stories with my lovely writers group. So I'm curious about what kind of stories you want to tell through your art. I'm sure it's not deliberate, because you never know. But have you seen a pattern maybe in that sense?
Most artists have a running theme, and everything will go back to that theme. Even if you think you're doing something completely different, there's always that as an undercurrent. I mentioned the seen and not seen, and the idea also of exposure. That's also really interesting. I think our current narrative is this, what it means to be in a modern partnership. So we wanted to come together to look at ourselves through portraiture. So you've got the more static way of looking at portraiture, which is, just painting each other. So that we started with that. Because we live together, work together, and seems timing-wise a really good time to just stop a little bit and focus on each other in a different way. So that's what we started, and through a sort of 3-month period we drew each other just using charcoal and just saw what happened. What discussions we had when we were in the studio looking at each other for an hour, intently looking at each other differently, and we had a lot of discoveries.
Is it? Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, it's like you see yourself in the other person sometimes, or what you have experienced
also
together.
how you're depicting each other.
Yeah, that
comes across like that. And
that was very revealing. So I was able to look at Stuart and draw him as I see him, and I felt quite comfortable with that in life, like really doing that. But I think
was it hard for you?
I mean, I find portraits are quite challenging. I work a lot with the figure, but going into portraiture is, I'm very comfortable kind of drawing myself. Self-portraits are fine, but
interesting. I would think the vice versa. Find drawing another person easier, and then finding drawing myself harder.
I guess because I won't kind of be self-critical. I will, but not in a way.
Okay.
Whereas so it's very interesting. Whereas if I'm maybe not capturing someone in a certain way, and our work isn't always representational, it's sometimes quite abstracted. So it's really not always about that representation, but it's just sometimes about how it communicates, and also it polarizes a little bit some of the things that maybe you bring your domestic life into the studio a little bit. Because when you're looking at someone and working from them, it brings in some of that domesticity in a way that you wouldn't normally expect to come away from when you're going through your independent practice. You come away from that, you leave that behind, whereas actually if you're working with each other so intensely.
But let's tell Sinem what you drew.
How do you mean? Oh well, I mean the first
the
piece,
fact that it was hard for you.
Yeah, I mean Tahira wasn't very happy with my first piece at all.
Why you weren't happy?
I think it came across quite stern.
I mean, this is the thing. You have to be very
open.
Yeah, you cannot judge someone
Yeah,
else's
yeah,
drawing.
it's his
Yeah.
way of
But I
seeing.
did.
How dare you draw me like that?
I think Tahira took it as a personal assault on her
No,
character.
what I saw is the struggle, actually, because what he was drawing, which is absolutely true, was my harder side. And that was
Which we all
hard.
have.
That was really hard to look at. I didn't like it.
Yeah.
I really didn't like that. And then obviously
But
that
then he showed you that side
yeah,
of yours.
course.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I thought, oh, where's the other bit?
The other bit came later. It did arrive.
Yeah, it was a real challenge.
Yeah.
And then we came away from the more literal portrait and we started to work overlaying and working more sensory, eyes closed, touching each other's faces. Then we went more on a big paper. And that was actually...
We used a big backdrop film set roll paper.
Yeah, it's vast. I've seen the.
so-
It's really,
Yeah,
that
we
was
worked.
we really, and we're still doing that, so that's current.
So we're developing that further. But just I remember I realised you asked a little bit about landscapes as well.
Yeah.
And so I think part of it comes through is also the fact that we really love the landscape and especially coastal scenes, and we spend a lot of time as our children were growing up going down to the same place in North Cornwall as a bit of a family holiday, and we spent a lot of time down there, and we like the sea and being
But
on the coast.
nature is
and nature.
really dominating.
Nourishing.
Yeah,
So that is
it's
definitely
very important in our practice, I think.
Yeah, so that's definitely coming through, and we're developing. We've got themes that really respond to that, and bringing it back and making it very current, and how it links to well-being and people and re-nurturing.
And actually,
know.
you talk about stories. We're very interested in stories and other people's stories, because I think as we, as artists, unlock that, it's very nice to encourage other people to unlock their stories, and that's that's our model of how we exist as artists and working, and we love to bring that out in other people. It's not that everyone's an artist, but everyone has a creative element that sometimes is hidden. It's not allowed to show it, or it doesn't feel relevant, or and actually that creative side is really important.
Well,
And it goes
my
on
next
to-
question
yeah.
wasn't about this, but it very nicely ties to another question of mine, which was to Stuart, actually, because you are doing the consultations mostly to the businesses, right? Or you as well, Tahira. I think Stuart only.
Yeah, so the consultation side of things. Yeah,
So the question was to enhance productivity through creativity. And you work with many big organizations like British Museum, British Council, Museum of London, Royal Botanic Gardens. So how do you introduce artistic thinking to professionals who might not see themselves as creatives at all? That's why I was inspired by where you left off.
Yeah, so it's interesting because it's been on quite a journey really, and I think it began back in 2010 when I was asked to take a lead role for the British Council in an international kind of project working with communities and education and sharing a joint kind of community project with southern and eastern China, and it developed from there. But then it went on a bit of a lull because the funding really came out of community and education based involvement because of where we were with kind of the economic crisis at the time. And we developed that. I'd be leading training days, and I'd be often set up a training day for scientists who'd come to Kew Gardens to get their official Kew Gardens stamp for their diplomas, even if they had been actual scientists at different organisations around the world. They'd always come to Kew. The gravity of Kew always drew people across. So I'd always develop and kind of work with them about how to enhance their own kind of practice, even as scientists within an organisation. So that kind of developed there. But we started to bring that in as soon as we launched the business in 2016, and very quickly had clients where we were able to help to work with them together in a way that we could stimulate that idea of cohesion and togetherness, and that actually being a business is a creative practice. Businesses are built from the ground up.
Yeah.
They then often change and things get filtered down. So the thing that makes a business is often then flipped on its head so that it can be managed. and it's trying to get this idea that actually the idea that of all the employees, regardless of their position and structure of a company, should all still be at some point on a level so that you can actually understand what it is that makes it tick, that all the mechanisms are just as important as one another, to be able to kind of help them flow.
Be themselves.
But there's also not being contained by the box of your role. So you get given a role, and therefore you feel a bit like society, that we're in a category you mentioned earlier, we're in a box. But actually, we need reminding that everyone can input, that those boxes should be disregarded or broken down every now and again to help remind us all that the creative thinking is the thing that's developing and leading, and that everyone's got an input into
individual thinking, a bit like, so we looked at team building. So if you go on a team building day, you're doing something like sport.
Yeah.
Well, you all might have a fun time, but actually, what do you really come away with? What do you really, you'll get... and also, like, there are paint evenings where you all paint the same thing. So, again, you come away going, oh, yeah, I painted the Mona Lisa, great. But there's always that sort of slight sense of judgment. You're not really coming away with your individual...
Well, to be honest, I have. I mean, I'm sure I have gained a lot, but at the same time, it felt all of the trainings that I've been through felt really artificial.
Exactly, because they're not really speaking to you, and you're having to then go somewhere, and you're still in a challenge of going, well, someone's obviously better at me than at drawing, or someone's better at me than jumping over that thing. You don't really come away with a sense of achievement or confidence.
Yeah, or gaining something.
Yeah, what we wanted to do was tap into your individual. So through art, it's not art as in you have to make an amazing painting. That's not it.
No, we find definitely not accessible ways to work with everyone, so that you level the playing field. So even those who've got a natural drawing ability aren't then showing how that and making someone else feeling uncomfortable or someone else feeling inferior. Actually, what we do is make very connected.
All starting at the same place.
Okay. Regardless of your position, level, title, whatever.
What will come out of it is your individual response to that, and that is praised and looked at genuinely.
Oh yeah.
And so then you can work
then the
together.
connections started
absolutely
being
then
made.
You think, I didn't know I could do that. We did a session with some architects, and one architect hadn't drawn for years. I mean, years. He knew he had that. He just hadn't tapped into it. He started to do it, and he was like unlocking a whole load of stuff, and he was feeling genuinely nourished by that. And then in that moment, he's going to definitely nourish someone else.
Yeah.
And in terms of consultancy, the idea of the way to take that forward is then for those business wanting to invest a bit more time, is that they can actually take those soft skills into a business ethos, and that the company culture starts to develop a little bit of a kind of softer approach and a more diverse approach to how they work with their employees.
Which is becoming more and more on the agenda.
But also it's a skill to tap into what people are experiencing, and that's something we've developed over the years. We can safely say that we've got a lot of expertise in the communicating through art with people, and that is a skill that's developed, but also the ability to empathise and connect, which is difficult.
Then things follow naturally rather than pushing from outside. This again ties very naturally another question of mine, which is like you're working with both kids and adults, and at what point, I'm really curious about this, at what point do children stop thinking of themselves as artists?
We identified that it's usually when children reach year 7. So they have been at junior school, everything is still playful, feels really genuinely nice, and then as soon as they hit secondary school, it just starts to shift completely, because then people look at you, people judge you, and so something like art is a no-no, because you're going to be drawing those great flowers or something, and someone will say, whoa, what are you doing that for?
Okay. Oh, the judgment. So the
judgment.
The element of judgment.
Drawing matters. To, I mean,
this is your very valuable program.
Different to adults, really. So but if you can start young, So we see all these young people and they will do very interesting things, like they might draw something and write, "I don't like it."
Yeah, they're very honest.
Or just before anyone else says it, they will say it. But we build a lot of confidence, and again, that unique, unlocking that unique voice that everyone has. That's the most important thing, and with that brings that confidence. So in our classes, we always have a theme. It could be something very literal, like a study of a still life, but we encourage that, what is it you're actually seeing? So sure, I can teach you how to draw it perfectly, and if that's what you want, that's what we're here for. But you can learn that on the internet. But I want to know how you see it, how you make that mark. Are you someone so delicate and gentle in how you make your drawings? Are you someone who's very not rough, expressive? All of that's allowed. All of that is absolutely allowed. And if you can, and then you apply all of your amazing skills to anything you're drawing, and that you stay experimental.
So I mean, you very nicely answered my question about the Drawing Matters program. So why would it matter so much today? But I think you've given all the answers about recognizing the individuality.
Keeping up imagination and experimentation. Adults definitely come to us to reignite a love for art, but they often think that there's an easy answer about how to paint. And draw, and then this will make everything easier. If there's a formula, I'm done. However, what they don't realise is that this journey can take a long time, and they have to do a lot of reflecting.
Yeah,
so there's a lot of healing involved, which again
very less people are doing. Yeah,
to when you're younger, when you were told you couldn't sing or you couldn't do this, or you're not very good at that. So you have to do a lot of unpacking.
Yeah, unlearning.
To get back to that place that makes, what is your essence? How do you really see something, and how do you then put it onto the canvas? And allowing that, because we're all different. We are never going to make the same artwork.
Yeah.
But also it's creating any art is a vulnerable space. A vulnerable space. A bit like when you put out a piece of writing. You're opening yourself up to criticism.
Oh, it was the hardest thing ever. I was doing, because
maybe it's like writings that you're inspired by someone and you want to write like someone, but actually it's not your voice. It's not really. You can be inspired, but you want to find your take on it. What are you really trying to say? And how,
Well, I think this is very human. These all sounds very human, and it's very, at the core of who we are, kind of, which cannot be replicated by the AI, which is another question. So the rise of the AI-generated art, what do you think, without, I don't want to give any judgments before I ask this question. So are you more on the dark side about the future, about all these AI, or do you see hope, or do you see opportunity? I don't know, like, how do you see it?
Yeah, so I think it's we won't know until we know in the future. We are of a generation where lots of new technologies have arrived in our lives since we've been born, whereas maybe our children are born into it currently. They will have the same transition as they get older. New things will arrive in their life. They won't know. So there's always a voice in the back of your head kind of telling you not to sound like your own parents, of like going, all this new technology, blah blah blah. But I think there's some kind of positive potentials. Currently, I still think, and the way I described this when we were looking through, some of the questions, is that I feel that there's this little human membrane. There's something very thin, a thin membrane that separates currently AI responses from real life pure human responses, whether it's through writing, photography, painting, whatever it is. I think there's just a little bit of separation that does differentiate between an AI produced result and
I like how you describe this distinction with metaphor of the membrane.
It feels like
Yeah.
it's that thin. It feels like it's that connected. We think of the human body having a fascia that's this really thin membrane. Membranes in the kind of lens of the eye. We've got these little things that run through, and I think at the moment, currently where we are, that is still creating a separation between AI generated outcomes and pure human created outcomes. That I think could easily change in the future.
Yeah, you said something about
think
still
so.
needs human input.
But I do believe that even with AI, you still have to. I think the artwork, the creative element might change so that it's the way that we input into AI that also then has an impact on the outcome of what's being produced. And that could then become the new form of creativity, or a new form of creativity,
So
how we're inputting.
Yeah, you sound a bit hopeful, actually. Rather.
Well,
or is it coming from becoming?
I don't know if I want it. I think I'm still like, I'd rather it's not here. Ideally,
Okay.
I would rather it's not here.
I think
You know.
we're just way too fast.
Yeah.
We're just not. We're not realising.
And it's getting
and the
faster
bigger
even.
people are saying, "Oh, it's okay. We can use it for the NHS." But actually, what I didn't realise is that it uses up a lot of water.
Oh yeah.
It's not sustainable. It's not great, and we love it. We love all this new technology. And we think, oh yeah. But it's way too fast. We're going way too quickly, and we're forgetting again. It has an impact. It will always have an impact.
Yeah.
Something so amazing. It's a bit like the most tastiest treat on the street in a lovely bakery. You actually look at what it's made of. It's just cheap, fast way of making that amazing thing.
You can't
We
get
love
something
it.
for
It
nothing.
tastes so
Yeah.
good, but
Yeah, but it seems it's a bit inevitable.
yeah, and I
Yeah.
Well,
I
it
don't
is
like the
because,
sustainable.
yeah.
If we love nature, we can't have AI. It's not going to work. It doesn't go together. So I don't know.
We'll see. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Until we know what we
so
will.
whether
yeah.
I'm hopeful or not, I think it's more that I think that is potentially a route that will evolve in terms of creativity. And like I said, I don't know if I really want it, but I think people will argue and say that is a new form of creativity as AI evolves and embeds in our life more. But again, like Tahira's saying, if that's going to be something that we'll then in future years find that we've got a crisis on our hands because of what it's doing, and maybe water prices go through the roof because it becomes something
we
that
just
is,
love new technology, and then we just don't stop to think of what impact it has, and
I mean, I can see Stuart's point. I can see your point as well, but I can see Stuart's point being not coming from the fear of sounding like our parents, which reminds me of a Sumerian tablet, actually. I need to tell this to you. It's at the Anatolian Civilizations Museum in Ankara, and it's a Sumerian made out of dried soil, these tablets from Sumerians. And it says, oh, the young people, these young people, they're very careless, they don't respect the old people, and they're how irresponsible they are. But it's like, ages and ages ago. So it's a trend,
Yeah.
people keep saying about what's new or next generation. But I can see you are not coming from that reservation, but there's a genuine feeling that things might change how we perceive things through AI and create things through AI. With what cost, we don't know yet. Yeah.
There's also, I think, one thing I was made aware of through a conversation with someone is that, we don't, like our children, their brains are evolving in a different way to the way that our
They are
brains
being
are
wired in
evolving.
a different
Absolutely.
way. Yeah.
And we just don't know. So everything's about balance. We have to accept that. If I put that down as a kind of concrete, almost carved in stone, I think life is about balance. However we carve that into our lives and we kind of observe that is another thing. But if we take that as a kind of leading kind of like thing that we should be aware of. Then this idea about taking, always taking our children off of their devices, I think is good to a point, but when maybe all this training that they're doing, maybe it's kind of like unconscious training they're doing for later on in life, because we just don't know. We just don't know what the world is going to be in 20 years' time.
I think 2 years' time.
Yeah, even less. Can you imagine 20 years' time? 15, 20 years'
unimaginable.
Time? What's going to be happening? So we just don't know what kind of training and evolution is happening, because you can't
But
see
also
that.
they have
right now.
most, obviously, it's really difficult when it doesn't go right. So that is
When things go,
unfortunate. If it's abused and used in the wrong way. But I don't know. If you can talk to your children, that's the first thing.
Yeah.
And then communicate. That you'll actually find out that they're quite on it. They're quite aware of a lot of things.
Yeah.
If you give them that space. And I think that maybe that applies to everybody. If we just... I don't know.
I think all parents are still learning, aren't they?
But that's more about children and phones and the future. But they are the future. So our children are what's coming.
Yeah.
So
Well,
how
I
do
quite
we-
agree with maybe they are being trained in some sort of way actually to be ready. So what is the... Well, I think discussing with them is the most being open, and because they are able to understand. It's not like you are the adult and you know the answers, and then they are the people who needs to be trained on something. No.
Our son, who's younger, so our daughter is 4 years apart. We're on at him, we're still on at him. Mommy, on your phone, don't have your phone close to your bed.
Yeah.
It goes on and on. Actually, he was observing his own friendship group. He noticed that his friends were not being kind to each other, actually, and through the phone.
Yeah, they can see things as well,
They
if you
text
let
each
them.
other, and he just thought, I don't like that. I can't be part of that. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to come off it.
It's a better way rather than putting controls
But
and
he did it himself.
Yeah.
So we're either really
That's
lucky,
the hardest way, but
he trusted his own feeling about it. He still needs to have his phone for work, school, work, whatever. But he's come off social media because he does not want to be part of that.
But it was his decision, not
It's
you
completely
banning
his
him or
decision.
something.
On the flip side, our daughter is on the phone all the time, because she's in her own space right now, and she needs it for whatever reason. Although if we talk to her openly, she will definitely go, I learn a lot from it, so she uses it in her own way.
It's the being close to your kid actually is what is
Absolutely.
important here. Like
I think
being
so.
connected and being able to do connected conversations
I
with
think,
them.
I don't know. My mum was Italian. I know she was very in my face, but in a way I didn't mind that because I felt her connection, and it meant that someone cared about me. I don't know. There was some families can be kind of maybe quite distant, and you lose touch then. You lose that.
It's all about the balance as well. I quite like how our conversation followed the circular route, because we started being, talking about how all these, titles or, what you have inside is,
They all connect to us, It's almost cyclical in a way.
And then we came back to the point where we started about the balance.
But maybe it's it's a human practice. So maybe AI isn't what we want. We want human connection. We want human vibration.
Openness.
And that goes across family. It goes across the art that we make. We as humans we want to feel stuff.
Yeah.
So to know that we're
wonderful.
connected.
Yeah, it's the only way. So before we close off, I want to ask you about anything, any upcoming exhibitions or any exciting projects on the horizon?
We've got a few things coming up.
A big funding application we're doing, which is related to a project with nature. That's going to be in the
Landscape.
Yeah, that's something I think last year was it kind of clicked for us. We applied. And this is the funny thing. Sometimes I'm not sure why we do certain things, but we're very instinctive in how we work our everyday. We have that liberty, I guess, not liberty.
This is quite important. Yeah.
Space. I think that maybe comes back to the beginnings, that we allow ourselves space to go, oh, what are we actually feeling right now? We can do that. We can do that. And we applied for a national proposal, and we were shortlisted.
Oh, well done.
Which was
Congratulations.
down to 5. You know, we didn't get it, but they really did love our idea. It's just that they went with someone who, it was about numbers, and it was about, they'd done this before, so it was a little safer option. Even though they wanted to embrace something
we
new.
created something ambitious,
Okay.
really ambitious.
They
and
wanted
really
ambitious,
exciting.
we created ambitious, and they didn't want it. But we got a lot of good feedback from that, so it made us think, okay, this is really interesting, and it brought us back to our love for nature and how we can bring that back in the community through art, an art way. So that's on the horizon.
So that's, we've been working really since the end of last year, kind of, developing that proposal and looking for opportunities really to be able to kind of put it into practice.
Yeah.
And we've got, so
There's a few funding streams, just you have to apply, and
but we've got our own exhibition that we created last year, Drawn Together. Which we're developing as well. So we're
looking for a space to ignite that back up, and we've got some really cool ideas about how we can involve the viewer into that. So that's quite exciting. May even become local. I've got a couple of pieces of work at One Paved Court coming up in March.
Oh, good.
And then we're part of the Richmond Arts and Ideas Festival,
Oh, okay.
which will be a little bit
When
about,
it will be?
So it's in June.
June.
So I think it's the last 2 weeks of June. The whole festival launches in the borough, and we were awarded a micro grant to help kind of develop our idea, which is based on our national landscapes,
but a smaller
kind of commission,
version.
but a much smaller version. And we'll be delivering that from the Exchange, and that will be on the weekend of the 28th and 29th of June.
June, yeah.
So,
Oh, good.
So we'll be kind of inviting people to come and visit us as part of that installation, and they'll have an experience with us, and we'll take them out into nature as well. So we get them connecting with our digital art piece, but also then take them into real life context.
That
as
sounds quite exciting.
Oh,
So,
it's so we're very excited about that. So there's a lot going on.
Well done. Perfect. Amazing. Thank you so much again for talking
That's
to me, and I quite enjoyed it. Hope you enjoyed as well.
Yeah, it's really
it's
nice
great.
actually. It's always nice to have the questions to respond to, because it helps you to kind of think about what you're doing as well sometimes.
Yeah, because you're so close into.
Sometimes,
what
you
you're
get a
doing.
little
I
bit
think,
close. And,
we're kind of. It's good to get out.
Yeah. Oh,
We need to
so
get
good to
out.
hear.
Yeah.
Great to hear. Thank you again.
Thanks, Anand. That was great.
Now I need to find a way to pause this. Oh. Yes.